There are very few incidents in the life of Jesus that are narrated by all the four Gospels, like the Passion, the miracle of the feeding of the 5,000, the cleansing of the temple, which is found in the Synoptic Gospels, is also found in the Gospel of John. However, while in the Synoptic Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, it is found towards the end of the Gospel when Jesus is in Jerusalem, the first time and only time when he is to suffer and die. Because John shows Jesus going to Jerusalem on at least 3, if not 4 occasions, we have it at the beginning of John's Gospel in chapter 2, verses 13 to 25. Jesus has come into the temple to worship. He has come to adore God. He has come to extol God's praises. But what he notices is this, that within the temple, there is everything else going on except worship. Everyone else is present except God. And because the temple is a symbol for God's presence, Jesus needs to cleanse the temple when he tells those who are selling and buying and making his Father's house a trade to take everything out of the temple precincts and to stop making his Father's house a marketplace. The marketplace is a place where there is barter exchange. A marketplace is a place where there is buying and selling. When Jesus says his Father's house should not be a marketplace, what he is focusing on is not only the external buying and selling, which was true and which he focused on, but more importantly, telling people that with God, there is no barter exchange. With God, there is no give and take. God gives so freely, God gives so magnanimously, God gives so generously, and God gives without expecting in return. So when Jesus says in the gospel text of John, unlike in the synoptic gospel where he talks about a den of robbers, in the gospel of John, the focus is on our relationship with God. When we go to a marketplace, we go to buy something, we have to give something in exchange for what we buy. That is a barter exchange. That is a give and take. That is a mutual relationship. However, when we come before God, very clearly, there is no buying and selling. There is no giving something to God so we can take something more from God, because God will always give us and continue to give us, no matter how worthy we might be, no matter how righteous we might be, no matter how much of a sinner we might be. But God will expect nothing in return. And that's why Jesus wants the people of his time to get this image of God when he says to those who are buying and selling, not to convert the temple into a marketplace. He goes on then to talk about the destruction of the temple and the rebuilding of the temple. Those who are listening to him misunderstand what he means and talked about the 46 years which has taken to build the external temple. Very clearly, once again, Jesus has got to correct the understanding, because Jesus is not talking so much about the physical temple as he is talking about the temple of himself, and he being that place in which worship will take place. By talking about the destruction of the temple, Jesus realizes that this image of God which he gives people is not an image that is easy to accept. The larger majority of us prefer to deal with God as we would deal with people in a marketplace. We prefer to be good. We prefer to do good in order that God will reward us even more. This is known sometimes as the prosperity gospel, where we are told if you give a donation of 100, you will get 300 in return. So it's a barter exchange. This is the kind of thing that Jesus wanted to abolish once and for all. And so, when he speaks about the destruction of the temple, what he is talking about is the destruction of this way of worship and the reconstruction of a new way of worship in which we will worship God in spirit and in truth, in which our worship will be a response to God's graciousness to us, in which we will not do something only to earn or to merit God's favor. That we will not look up to God in fear, then we will realize that our God is a generous and gracious, loving God who will never condemn. When we have turned this relationship into such a relationship, then we can truly worship God. In the first reading of today, we will hear Moses give the commands to his people, the commands which he received from God of adoring God, of worshiping God, and yet Moses is very clear that this worship of God cannot take place in isolation. Worship of God has to take place first in our hearts, if it has to take place in reality. And when it takes place in our hearts, that is, when we love others as we love ourselves, it is then that we are really living out what we need to live out. That is why we are invited by Jesus not to make our place of worship, which is primarily our heart, into a marketplace. During these days, we may not have been able to visit the places to which we usually would go in order to worship God. And in a certain sense, it is a good lesson for us to realize that we do not necessarily need to be physically in that place to which we were used to going in order to be able to worship God. We can worship God in the confines of our hearts. We do not need a big home. We do not need a room to be closed. We simply need an open heart in which to worship God. And this is what Jesus is inviting us to do. He's also inviting us to change our relationship with God from dealing with God as we would deal with somebody in a marketplace to a realization that with God, there is only graciousness. With God, there is only unconditionality. With God, there is magnanimity and total love. Have you been dealing with God as if dealing with someone in a marketplace? Will you stop that and deal with God as love and only